Hello, everyone, and welcome to Singularity One-on-One. Singularity One-on-One is a podcast feature of Singularity weblog where you can go and listen to it or download it in full. As you may already know, my name is Nicola, aka Socrates, and as always, I am the man with the questions. Today, the guest on the show is Jose Cordeiro. Jose is on the faculty of Singularity University and where he often spoke about his favorite topic, which is the Energularity. And this is the reason why I invited him to speak to us here today. So, hello, Jose, and welcome to Singularity One-on-One.
Hello, Nicola. It is a pleasure to be with you to talk about energy and about the Energularity.
That is fantastic, Jose. So before we drive into the topic, I would like to start my interviews usually by asking a little more details about the personal background of the person that I'm interviewing. Because I want to find out not only what you do, but who you are, because I believe those two things are very much connected. So if you were to describe yourself in your own words, how would you describe yourself?
Well, today I work as a futurist. So basically, I look at future trends and see what is happening. And that is what I'm doing right now. But I have gone through many changes in my life. And most of my working life, actually, I worked as an energy expert, trying to find new energy sources.
That is fascinating. And one of the most interesting, perhaps, stories that our viewers are not aware just yet of is that you almost became the Minister of Energy of Venezuela. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about that story, how it unfolded, and how it ended up that you didn't become the Minister of Energy?
During 1997 and 1998, I was the energy advisor to one of the presidential candidates of Venezuela. Her name, Irene Saez Conde, a beautiful woman, in fact, so beautiful that she was Miss Universe. She had been Miss Universe 1980, representing Venezuela, and after becoming Miss Universe, she went into politics, and she was the mayor of Caracas. And then when she was the mayor of Chacao, Caracas, she asked me if I wanted to work with her and be her energy advisor and energy minister of Venezuela if she won. Unfortunately, in 1998, instead of the Miss Universe and the beautiful mayor of Chacao, Caracas, winning the election, it was Chavez, Hugo Chavez, who won. So I say it is a tragedy. It was not the beauty that won, but the beast.
Well, but then the question is, were those fair elections in your opinion? Because if they were, then I guess that the people spoke.
At that time, yes, that was probably the last fair election in Venezuela in 1998. Since that time, the political situation in Venezuela changed a lot, and we cannot say anymore that there are free elections in Venezuela today.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me to an old saying which goes about to claim that most revolutionaries end up being tyrants. And as we know from history, that's what happened during the French Revolution, and there's numerous other examples. And perhaps it is not so hard to claim that this is exactly what happened and is still going on in Venezuela, unfortunately. And I was even reading recently that Caracas is the most dangerous city with something like, or Venezuela, 50 murders per day, some shocking statistics like that.
Yeah, the numbers are really horrible. Actually, in Caracas, it is 50 murders per week, not per day, per week. And in the rest of the country, about another 50. So it is close to 100 people being killed per week. That gives, if you multiply it 100 times, 52 weeks, that makes over 5,000 people who are killed every year in Venezuela. This is like a civil war that is happening in Venezuela.
Yeah, that's shocking. But on the other hand, it couldn't be then the highest because if those numbers are 5,200, I think in Mexico for the last couple of years it was definitely over 10,000, and I've heard numbers with such as 20,000 and so on. But anyway, let's.
Yeah. The difference. No. The difference is the population. Mexico has 110 million people. Venezuela has less than 30 million people. So if you do it per
Absolutely.
capita, in
Absolutely.
per capita terms, the numbers are the highest, sadly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's turn the tape a little bit further backward and start with this question. How did you become to be interested in energy, and how did you get involved in the energy industry? I know that you're an engineer by education. I know that you're a former graduate you are a graduate of MIT. So how did you start with MIT and ended going up in the oil and gas business?
Well, as a child, I always loved science fiction and space travel and all the things happening or possible in the world. I used to read Jules Verne. So Jules Verne was really a motivator for me. When I finished high school, I won a scholarship to go to MIT. And when I arrived to MIT, I read one of the most famous books ever written, which I have here, which is The Limits to Growth. The Limits to Growth actually that came out in 1972 and I read in 1980 when I arrived at MIT, was a best-selling book talking about the coming collapse of civilization because of energy problems, shortages, pollution, overpopulation, and so on and so forth. So from that time at MIT, I became more and more interested in the future of humanity and the future of energy particularly. So I studied mechanical engineering and I began working as a energy engineer for a French multinational called Schlumberger. And I traveled with them to 5 continents looking for oil and gas. So basically, I began working in the fossil fuels industry. Now I have moved and I am working more onto renewable energy, but I did begin looking for a natural gas and oil around the world.
And then, how did you and why did you make the transition from the oil and gas industry into being even more interested and more focused on advanced technologies, and especially involved in as a faculty of Singularity University?
Well, for that, I will have to show you another book, which is here. The singularity is near, okay? I have it wrong. Okay. Yeah, the singularity is near. I met actually Ray Kurzweil in 2001 when he was presenting his previous book, which was called The Age of Spiritual Machines. So I met him in a conference by the World Future Society, and I really became interested in the things that he was talking about, and also the changes that were happening in energy, that there was an energy transition coming up, which I was aware of because I was also interested in solar energy. So basically, when you realize how much potential we have in terms of solar energy, we have over 10,000 times more solar energy that the human civilization uses today. So we have incredible amounts of solar energy while fossil fuels are decreasing because we don't have unlimited fossil fuels, but we do have unlimited solar energy. So basically, this is how I got more involved into renewable energies. And then talking about the singularity and Ray Kurzweil, when I read in 2008 that a new university was being created with Ray Kurzweil, who is actually from MIT, with a co-founder, Peter Diamandis, who is also from MIT, let me tell you. So both of them are MIT alumni. I contacted all my friends, all my people, because I wanted to be involved with that university from the beginning. And so I started working in 2009 for the summer program at Singularity University.
That's absolutely fascinating. So let me just dive a little bit deeper onto the Singularity University topic, and then we'll go back to energy. So what is the purpose of Singularity University anyway?
Well, I think it's the greatest idea of the world to prepare humanity for the transition that we're going to see in the next 20, 30, 40 years with all these converging technologies that I normally refer to NBIC, NBIC, Nano, Bio, Info, and Cogno. So these technologies, these new sciences are radically changing humanity. And even more, they are changing human beings. We are being changed by these technologies at an exponential rate of change. So this is actually a change that is accelerating and going faster and faster and faster. And we will change from the old world using fossil fuels, for example, talking about energy, to a new world of almost unlimited possibilities and unlimited energy.
So, where does Singularity University fit within your own personal goals and motivation?
Well, I think Singularity University is a very unique concept of preparing leaders for this new world of the technological singularity. Because I have also been working as an academic for some part of my life, I feel very at home teaching in this place where we are trying to find leaders for this transition towards a better and more energetic humanity.
And as one of the former students of Singularity University and current alumni, I can personally vouch that you are, in fact, the highest energy faculty member of Singularity University by far. You create an Energularity of your own during your time that you spend on the stage. So perhaps now is the time to ask you, what does the Energularity mean? Did you coin the term, and what does it stand for?
Yes, as far as I know, I invented the term, which is based on the idea of the singularity, but for energy. There is a previous name that was also invented by Aubrey de Grey. Aubrey de Grey, who is also an invited faculty at Singularity University, he created the idea of the methuselarity. The methuselarity being the time when we will reach escape velocity of living long enough to live forever. So this idea of the methuselarity or the singularity inspired me to create a concept for energy. And what best concept that to reach a point where humanity will have almost unlimited amounts of energy. And for that, I actually used the energy scale of the universe, which was created by a Russian scientist called Nikolai Kardashev. Nikolai Kardashev, who is still alive in Russia, he wrote in the 1960s about the energy scale of the universe, beginning with a planet that uses all the energy available to it that has civilization type 1. Then a civilization type 2 is one civilization that uses all the energy available to the solar system. So not just to the planet, but to the whole solar system where the planet is located. And then civilization type 3 to the galaxy. And then eventually we can talk about civilization type 4, a civilization that uses all the power, all the energy available to the supercluster of galaxies. And finally, civilization type 5, when we reach all the power available in the known universe. Okay, so that's a lot of energy. And we humans right now are actually at a very, very tiny level of civilization type 1. We are almost nothing in terms of the amount of energy that we have available to our planet. So the idea then is to reach this energularity or reaching civilization type 1 according to Nikolai Kardashev energy scale for the universe.
So let me ask you this then. What I find very interesting about your argument and very unique is that on the one hand, you have environmentalists and a number of people who say that we have very high, unsustainably high consumption of energy as a civilization, right? And one of the best ways to ensure our future survival, according to that line of reasoning, is to conserve energy and to economize it and to use as little as possible. On the other hand, your argument is that actually it's quite the opposite, that actually we are going to accelerate our consumption of energy, but that would happen in a context in which energy becomes exponentially cheaper and exponentially more available. So how is that possible? I mean, amidst all the claims of the pessimists who claim that we're running out of resources, running out of energy, etc.
Well, actually, we can make a comparison to internet. When we think about internet 30 years ago, people thought that we could not have access to so much information and so much data, that it was impossible, and that it would create a collapse of the civilization that we had. And when you look at the situation today, it's just the opposite. We have more and more data, more and more information, and actually it is cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So the same, I think, is going to happen with energy. We are going to use more and more energy, and it is going to be cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Now, let me put this into perspective. Why are we going to use so much more energy? And the reason is because humanity will begin the um, exploration and colonization of the universe. And for that, we need lots of energy. We need a lot of energy because it is very energy expensive to take humans or to take robots out of our planet into the outer atmosphere. And that requires incredible amounts of energy. But again, I repeat, we have lots of energy reaching our planet from the sun, and we will be able to gather this energy very cheaply in the following 2 decades.
And how exactly are we going to gather that energy? Or I mean, what, in your opinion, is the energy of the future? You said that you started with the oil and gas industry, and then eventually you moved on to more renewable resources, such as solar being one of them. What is the future energy that our civilization needs to embrace, in your opinion?
Well, just as today we have an energy mix, even though it is mostly fossil fuels, because we have, to put it roughly, 1/3 of natural gas, 1/3 of coal, and 1/3 of oil, and then a little bit of other things, including nuclear energy and renewables today. In the future, we will also have a mix, but that mix will be tilted towards solar energy, because solar energy is the elephant, is the big elephant in the house. We also have plenty of wind energy. I mean, really a lot of wind energy. In fact, if we advanced wind energy enough, we could also power the whole of civilization today just using wind energy. Another good example is geothermal energy. Geothermal energy also has the potential to power civilization today. But when we compare those two, which are huge, which are big, they are nothing compared to solar energy. But let me tell you, even though solar energy is incredible and it's so abundant and it's almost unlimited, there is even more. There is so much more energy. If we look about what Einstein and his famous equation, E equals mc squared. This gives us even more energy than solar power. If we can convert a little amount of mass into energy using Einstein's equation, we have incredible amounts of energy. So solar power is not the end of the game. There is more energy if we use, Einstein's equation conversion of matter into energy, and even more in the future if we use antimatter into matter.
So, what do you say? I mean, I remember one of our guest speakers during last summer graduate studies program at Singularity University, I think, was the chief economist of ExxonMobil, and
Chevron Texaco.
Oh, Chevron Texaco. I'm sorry. But again, as an energy expert, you know better than me. But if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember according to his argument, he did not see or foresee that tilting that you were just talking about towards solar and alternative energy sources. And in fact, he claimed in his argument that fossil fuels, oil and gas, would continue to dominate for the next couple of decades. So...
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I don't believe in peak oil. Many people talk about peak oil, and obviously it will eventually happen, but not in 20 or even 50 years, because we do have plenty of fossil fuels today, and not just coal. We have a lot of natural gas, and we have a lot of oil. So if we continued on the current path, we still have enough fossil fuels. But I think we are going to change because of environmental considerations as well. The environment is important, and we really need to use better energy sources. And if we have solar energy, which is almost unlimited, and that hopefully this year in 2012 will reach grid parity. Grid parity means that solar energy in some markets obviously starting in the sunnier countries, will reach the cost of electricity produced from coal. Okay, and this will happen this year, 2012, in some sunny markets. This will radically change the industry because it is going to be cheaper to use solar energy than to use fossil fuels. And because economics rules the world, people will realize that it is actually cheaper. Not only is it environmentally better, but also it is economically cheaper to use solar energy. And this will continue during the following decades. So I think it is an incredible change happening. It is the biggest transition in energy we have seen in the history of the planet. And also, let me emphasize that energy is not any industry. Energy is the largest industry in this planet. Energy represents about $8 trillion of business. $8 trillion of business per year. That's a lot of money. And in this transition, we are going to go from old energy into new energy sources. So it's an incredible transition that some people don't realize. Like, let me compare it to internet or to exponential change in information. Many people don't realize still what is happening in the information technologies. Many people didn't think that we would have mobile phones for almost the whole planet. Today, 80% of the inhabitants of the planet already has a mobile telephone. This was totally unexpected 20 years ago. It was still unbelievable, even 10 years ago. Well, let me tell you what is going to happen in 10 years, 20 years. I foresee that in 20 years, at least half of the energy used in the planet will come from solar sources.
So, why is it that people in the industry, such as Chevron, Texaco, are failing to see that possibility as a very credible one? And what do you think would happen to them? Is that a denial, or is that simply a disagreement on the facts and the trends happening in the industry right now?
Well, because the energy industry is in transition, many things are happening and there is not a clear vision. And also there are big vested interests. Companies from the old oil industry have a lot of vested interest, and the infrastructure costs are huge. So for them, it is not convenient that this transition is fast. However, some companies are looking this transition even in the oil industry. And let me give you an example. Total, which is the big energy company, oil company from France, bought SunPower, which was the largest sun energy company in the USA in 2011. And why did Total, an oil industry company, buy the largest sun power company in the USA? Well, because they know that this is coming. And probably in 20 years, sun power will be bigger than Total, or it will produce more revenue for the old Total that the situation would indicate otherwise. So this is going to happen. ExxonMobil, again, is also interested in solar energy. Finally, British Petroleum also had some programs in solar energy and hydrogen that unfortunately they abandoned. They had so many problems, BP, that they abandoned the hydrogen program. But these trends will continue. I think they are unstoppable almost, because I repeat, not only are they good for the environment, they are cheaper. They are good for business. They are good for the economy.
You just mentioned the vested interest that those companies have, but what about other skeptics who point to the fact that similar predictions were made, say, in the late 40s and early 1950s about electricity, and some experts said that electricity would become so radically abundant that it would be just too cheap to meter, and it would be practically free. Well, looking 60 years down the road where we are today, this has not materialized just yet. So is there not the possibility that those predictions are going to end up the same way?
Well, anything could happen. That is for sure. But again, I'm telling you about the trends, what is happening. And I repeat, this year, we will reach grid parity with solar energy for the first time in some sunny markets. This is beginning to happen now. 50 years ago, the conditions were different. Actually, you can again compare this to artificial intelligence. Some people talked about artificial intelligence that it should have happened earlier. But why could not happen it earlier? Because we did not have enough computing power as we have today. In a similar way, you could say also that the solar industry actually is using many of the technologies to produce silicon panels for computers. They are using that for producing solar panels. So there is an exponential trend also in solar panels, and they are becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And it's beautiful. When you compare the trends in the reduction of the cost of solar panels, you can compare that to the computing power just 20 years ago.
And what do you think would be the effect of solar power reaching and eventually surpassing parity with oil and gas and other fossil fuel energy sources on countries such as Venezuela or such as many of the oil producing countries from the Middle Eastern region, who are entirely dependent on their GDP and their national revenue on fossil fuels? Do you not think
Well,
that would destabilize the global, the world, not only economically, but also politically and even militarily, socially?
well, Well, sure. I mean, this is a huge, huge transition. And again, in the largest industry in the world. So this is big. What is happening is big. But for one thing, the countries that right now produce oil basically are in sunny places as well. So, for example, some of the North African countries are very much in favor of solar power because they have a lot of sun also. You could say the same about Venezuela. Venezuela has a lot of sun, and you could say the same about the Middle East and some other oil-producing nations, even Indonesia and Nigeria. A bigger problem could be this Russia. Russia actually doesn't have that much sun, and it has a lot of oil. So the problem might be actually not with the Middle East, North Africa, Venezuela, Nigeria, or Indonesia, but with Russia. What is Russia going to do? Because Russia has a lot of oil, and Russia is one of the top two oil producers in the world. Russia is always competing with Saudi Arabia to see who is number one today. And the situation might be complicated in Russia. But again, in Russia, they also have a lot of technology. And in fact, I'm positive. I think they will use this technology to advance solar power even in Russia.
Yeah, that's another fantastic point that you just made about Russia, because as we know, Russia is one of the major nuclear powers in the world, which is at the same time still being run by an authoritarian regime, as we saw during the last election there. So that's indeed a very important thing to keep in mind about the position in Russia. And that also raises the stakes about what would happen in Russia, politically speaking. Would there be a transition to a new government which is not basically controlled by Putin and his cronies or not? And because that would have potentially global implications, as it does. But anyway, let me ask you this then. So, is the Energularity near or is it far? And if it is near or far, how far or near is it, and how do we estimate where it is?
Well, if we believe, as Ray Kurzweil says, that the technological singularity might happen in 2045, the Energularity is still farther down the road. Because with the current amount of energy, we can actually reach the technological singularity. But I think it would take maybe half a century more to go from the singularity to the energularity. So by the beginning of next century, the 22nd century, we will be reaching the energularity. And again, it makes sense because that is the point when we will massively begin the colonization of outer space. I think this will begin in the end of this 21st century, but it will go into big stream in the 22nd century.
So, in your own estimate, it's about 100 years or so off from where we are at today.
Yes. Actually, some people think it might be a bit farther down the road, maybe 200, 300 years, but I disagree because, again, this is accelerating. Like so many things are happening faster and faster. So I don't think it is 200 years. I think it is 100 years at the latest. Uh, again, but the other thing, we will reach this energularity not only through solar power, but also through nuclear energy conversion using Einstein's equation, E equals m times c squared. We will actually be using energy at that moment in 100 years, not just from solar power, but from mass to energy conversion.
Where does fusion fit into the Energularity?
Okay, actually, well, fusion is the way the sun or the stars make their energy, right? So we will use fusion to power some of our stellar spacecraft to travel from our solar system into other solar systems and other galaxies eventually. So we will probably use some fusion power in our spaceships. Ships.
So, to go back again, for you, the moment of Energularity would be the moment that we become a type 1 civilization according to the Kardashev scale?
That's right.
That is the litmus test that we have mastered the control of resources within our planet.
That's right. And again, to give a number to this, that is about 100 to 200 petawatts of power. Actually, we are talking about power. Power and energy are not exactly the same. There is a time factor that connects them. But talking about power, it is between 100 and 200 petawatts. A peta is 10 to the 15, so it's a very large number. Right now, human civilization is at about 15 terawatts. 15 terawatts. A terawatt is 10 to the 12. So we are going to go from 15 terawatts to about 100 to 200 petawatts, and this will happen in a century.
Wow, that's really flabbergasting kind of a progress and shift. So to translate that kind of picture, that kind of vision from the sort of physical measurement, would you describe that context of the Energularity? What if you had a time machine and you were able to go 100 years down the road? What would you see in the context of the Energularity? How would we know that we have arrived there?
Well, that's an excellent question. Like, how will we know when we have reached the technological singularity? It's not going to be exactly in 2045, as Ray Kurzweil says, probably. Or when will we reach the Methuselarity, this longevity, escape velocity of living long, to live forever. So when we will reach 100 to 200 petawatts of energy, it depends on so many things. It depends on how much space activities we do. I mean, humanity and post-humanity. I have to emphasize this. It's not just humans, but it will be a whole robotic civilization and cyborg civilization that will be fusioned with us. We are fusioning with our technology. And again, it is not just humans. It will be transhumans, post-humans, cyborgs, and robots that will colonize the rest of the solar system. And for that, again, we need incredible amounts of energy, reaching 100 to 200 petawatts. And it's going to be a very interesting road, a very winding path we are going to take into the future.
Well, some people have pointed out that one of the easiest ways to explain why the SETI program has not returned any positive contacts with an extraterrestrial intelligent civilization yet must be the possibility or the high probability of civilization-wide extinction. And some people point that the most likely, the most vulnerable period that this phenomenon can occur, and probably does occur, is the moment when such a civilization goes to stage 1 or from stage 1 to stage 2 civilization on the Kardashev scale. So, how vulnerable do you think we are during that highly transitional and highly volatile process? And how likely are we to survive it?
Excellent question, because we are living in the most incredible times in human history. We have enough technology to destroy our civilization. We have managed not to do it. And I think we will manage to move into the next phase of humanity and post-humanity. But again, we have to be aware that with nuclear weapons, soon with bioweapons, with nano weapons, and with energy weapons, we can destroy our civilization. And that is also why I strongly believe that we have to leave our cradle planet. We have to leave Earth. We have to go into other planets. We have to diversify our egg basket to go into other planets. But again, let me tell you, even though the scenario could be the total destruction of humanity and life on this planet, I am optimist. I am optimist, and I think we have to be optimistic about the future because that is what the future is about. Sir Arthur C. Clarke, who was one of the greatest science fiction writers ever, he said that many of these things are self-fulfilling prophecies. If we believe that we self-destroy ourselves, we will probably self-destroy ourselves. But if we believe that we will overcome all these problems, that we will transform our civilization into a type 1, a type 2, a type 3 civilization, then we will probably do it. So I also think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy that we will survive, that we will move ahead, that we will move onward, that we will move upward, that we will move outward.
This is fantastic, but I would like to push you a little bit further on that point because I'm always surprised by the answer that people give me. For example, Ray Kurzweil is often criticized for being too optimistic about our chances to survive the technological singularity. And just one example, I think I interviewed Michael Anisimov from the Singularity Institute, and he told me that he's also an optimist like you, but when I asked him to give a mathematical measure or percentage of our chances of surviving and overcoming the technological singularity, he said something like 2%, which totally shocked me. So if I press you to give a mathematical or a percentage probability to us surviving the technological singularity, what would that be in your estimate?
Well, I would say 99% or maybe more. Actually, let me tell you, Machiavelli. Machiavelli, also a very famous Italian political scientist, intellectual, writer, whatever. He actually said that most of humanity is good. And I believe that too. Most of humanity and post-humanity will be good. We do have some rotten apples in humanity, but they are very few and they are far between each other. So I think they will not have enough power to destroy civilization because the good ones are the majority, and we will overcome the rotten apples of civilization. So again, I also think, in evolutionary terms that things keep on getting better and better and better. So I think our descendants, humans and non-humans, will probably live in a better world, and the probability of this improving will continue because the more we know, the more we understand, the better things become. So I keep on being very optimistic, and I give no more than 1% for the destruction of our civilization at this stage.
Well, let me ask you this then, because you mentioned that you believe that our descendants would live in a better world. But what are our own chances to see that world for our own selves with our own eyes? Some of your colleagues at Singularity University, such as Aubrey de Grey, are working on longevity, escape velocity, and achieving the metacellularity that you've already mentioned. You have others such as Daniel Kraft, who is the head of the FutureMed program there, who bring together a number of cutting-edge experts from that field who often make similar arguments. So, what, in your opinion, is our chances of us witnessing this ourselves?
Well, when I said our descendants, that includes us. We will be our own descendants. But let me tell you, I do think that we will reach physical immortality in two fronts. One on the biological front, because in the next 20 years, we will be able to replace any organ of the body. And not only replace, but improve biologically any organ of the body. So we will be, if you want to put it this way, biologically immortal. But also, we will become computationally immortal. All the information that we have in our brains, and that information includes feelings, love stories, and memories, and all of that will be able to upload that into a computer or a machine also by the Singularity in 2045. So I do think we will be computationally and biologically immortal in the next 20 to 30 and at the latest in 40 years from now. And I do plan to be alive by then. So I do hope to be part of that first generation of immortals.
So, I mean, those are famous last words, but I have similar, I cherish similar hopes like you, but those are famous last words, so that makes me laugh sometimes. I mean, Marcus Aurelius said once that death smiles at us all. The only thing we can do is smile back. But I cherish similar hopes to you, as I said. Anyway, so we are going to live forever. We're going to have unlimited energy resources, which would allow us in turn to conquer the universe eventually. So, what should we do then? Should we just sit on our couches and play games and watch TV all day long? Or is there something that we should do? Should we just sit and wait for the singularity to happen?
Well, no, because again, if we don't work towards that, it might not happen because there is a small but a real probability that it might not happen. Not just the singularity, but then therefore not even the energularity. So we do have to work towards that, and also because it is exciting, it is fascinating. I enjoy everything I do, and I think the world is becoming more exciting, more interesting. Things are happening faster. I wish I could already amplify my mind, in order to read more, to do more things, also to amplify my body. I could be in at least 3 different places in one moment. I would love to do that, to upload my brain in different robots or cyborgs, whatever. So anyway, just to put it short, I think we have to work towards the most incredible transition of humanity. This is so exciting because also we are conscious of it. It is not like when we evolved from apes, we were not really that conscious of what might have been happening. At least I don't think so. But now we are aware of it. We are aware of all this technology that is improving us and improving the conditions of humanity in general. So I call this conscious evolution, as opposed to biological evolution, which is by trial and error. This conscious evolution is based on technology. It's based on design. We actually create the evolution we want to see, and we are conscious of it. So it's very different from what happened before, and I am very optimistic, and it is very exciting, and it is happening in 20, 30, 40 years, and we should be alive by then.
So you just mentioned this sort of conscious, deliberate evolution by design, which would take along our intelligence to our descendants, which we would become eventually ourselves. And we've been talking before that about concepts such as a technological singularity, the Methuselarity, the Energularity. Let me ask you this. Does it all add up to something? Is there a kind of a teleological direction towards that kind of evolution that we're describing here? I mean, some people, for example, claim that the ultimate end would be the universe waking up and the sort of a conglomeration of this giant computronium. Is that how you see the really far off future, or is that not a possibility in your mind?
Well, those are actually some of the possibilities of the future. And I'm not able to see that far away. Already looking into the singularity takes a lot of courage. But I think that something like a global brain will evolve, a global brain, and then we will maybe, as you said, and as Ray Kurzweil has written, the universe will wake up. This is very possible. This is very probable, and we are merging ourselves not only with our technology but with other humans. That is why I'm not so worried about all these privacy concerns, because we are integrating more and more with other humans continuously. And I actually like to make a comparison with the different cells of our body. The different cells of our body were separate once upon a time, a long, long time ago, billions of years ago, when all life forms were unicellular, only single cells. And then they got together and they created big organisms like us. Well, in the future, I think that we will create a super mega global brain across the universe. Something really incredible, beautiful.
Professor Kevin Warwick from the University of Reading, who is often called the first cyborg, for example, said that he and we would become the Borg eventually.
Yes, and I know him very much, and I like that. But let me tell you also a famous quote of one of my professors at MIT, who is also one of the fathers of artificial intelligence, Marvin Minsky. Marvin Minsky is very famous because he was asked if robots will inherit the planet, and he said, yes, but we will be them. They will be us. So again, this is the concept we are merging with our technology. That is why I talk about humans, transhumans, posthumans, cyborgs, robots, and many other things we cannot even dream of in the virtual worlds.
That's fascinating, Jose. Unfortunately, we're approaching the end of our interview. So before I ask you the very last question that I usually ask all my guests, let me ask you this. Where can our viewers and listeners go and find more information about you and your work and follow what you do?
Well, I have a web page just about me and some of the books I have written, but also I am very active in the Millennium Project. And let me actually talk about that briefly, because we publish every year a book which is called The State of the Future. And in this book, we talk about all the big trends that are happening in 15 areas, from energy to water, from democracy to technology. So I am very active on that, and I work on developing scenarios for the future of Latin America and the future of the world. So this is a good way to see some of my work also, which I highly recommend to everybody, including my books in Amazon.com.
That's fantastic. And then the last question that I always ask of my guests is this. Do you have a single message or the most important thing that you would like our viewers and listeners to take away from this interview today with you?
Yes, the future is beautiful. It is really incredible. We are going to see things we could never even dream of. Beautiful, incredible things. For that, we need a lot of energy. So reaching the Energularity is important. But we have to be optimistic. And this is the message I want to finish with. We have to be optimistic because this has even psychological considerations. And let me give you the example of the glass. Is this glass half full or half empty? And it is very important to think that it is half full, because it impacts the way you think, the way you act, and the way you look into the future. So the world is just half full. It is beginning to become fuller and fuller and more beautiful.
Wow, that's very well said. Thank you very much, Jose, for taking your time and being with us today on Singularity One-on-One.
For a great future full of energy.
Thank you.